Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studio. Today we'll be talking about this Afghan peace process. As we know that the government in the United States of America has changed now. Mr. Joe Biden is the person in charge along with his very close allies. Whether you talk about the Defense Secretary, General Austin Lloyd, or you talk about the Secretary of State, or you talk about the new National Security Advisor. Now the interesting part is that obviously we were thinking and we were planning that things would change. There is going to be a rapid, rather a quick response to what earlier was done by Donald Trump. But interestingly, things have changed. So today we'll be talking about the United States' intention to review February 2020 US Taliban agreement, including to assess whether the Taliban was living up to its commitments to cut ties with the terrorist groups, to reduce violence in Afghanistan, and to engage in meaningful negotiations with the Afghan government and other stakeholders. This was stated by Mr. Jake Sullivan, the new security advisor of the United States of America, and this report was also published in Al Jazeera television as well as Times of India. Second card tells us that we want to end this so-called forever war. We want to bring our forces home. We want to retain some capacity to deal with any sort of resurgence or terrorism, which is what brought us there in the first place. Nominee for Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. Now, he's another very important person in the new administration. It further adds that we have rearrested 600 of the freed individuals because they were fighting alongside the Taliban despite pledges that they would not rejoin the battlefield. Now, this was something very important and we will definitely talk about it. And this was stated by the Afghanistan's National Security Advisor, Hamdullah Mohib. And as far as Pakistani response is concerned, the Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says that I think they, referring to the Biden's administration, should realize there is an opportunity in Afghanistan and they should preserve with what was initiated and was not and will not reverse things. Now, a lot of debate is going on in the current administration. They believe that there are a couple of points. Number one is about the human rights, whether you talk about the rights of the minorities or the women, especially about their education and health and so on and so forth. Then there is another one regarding the recapture of certain number of Afghan Taliban. They were released earlier, but they were told not to fight alongside the ranks of the Taliban of Afghanistan. Then another one was about that they should distance themselves from the other terrorist groups. That was again something really important. And then what sort of an agenda will they follow? What sort of a government will be formed? What sort of an exercise will be done? And again, what do all the parties want and how to make sure that everybody is happy after receiving their own pie? The point is now that there are a lot of stakeholders, and then the actual story tells us that by the mid of 2021, there should be all the forces should be withdrawn and there should be no foreign troops as far as Afghanistan is concerned, and especially on their side. Now, this is something, this equation is pretty interesting. It's not that easy to solve. A lot of things will change. A lot of people believe that maybe Donald Trump was doing or rather taking few steps in a hurry, and now this administration is going to monitor and would look into the details and they will formulate a strategy. But most likely now it is again believed that there isn't going to be a bigger change. So to talk about this, we have with us in our studio Dr. Talat Shabir Saab. He's an expert on South Asia. Dr. Saab, thank you so much for your time, sir. And we'll also be talking to Parvez Jamil Mir Saab. He's a senior journalist. He'll be joining us on Skype. And we have thank you very much, sir, for your time, Parvez Saab, and we'll be also talking to Muhammad Khalid Khattak Saab, former ambassador, and he's going to join us on the telephone. So first question to you, Dr. Talat Shabir Saab. The last thing first. I was reading a couple of articles and what I got to know that the current Joe Biden's administration, whether you talk about the Secretary of State, you talk about the Secretary of Defense or National Security Advisor, the three most important posts, they all believe that first of all, nothing should be done in haste. They should evaluate the options and then take a decision. But at the same time, a lot of people believe that Joe Biden's team doesn't have much to maneuver and they do not have much to change either. So within the given parameters, they will have to take a decision. Your take, let's start off from there.
Yeah, right. I think this is very important at the moment when Joe Biden has taken over as American president, and we see the situation in Afghanistan still very precarious as it was before him. Now, the first problem of Joe Biden administration is that they wish to look different from Trump's administration. So when they say they are going to review the deal with Taliban, I think in my assessment this is going to be only a cosmetic step, because I don't think so that they have much to, as you said very rightly, that they have much to maneuver. For instance, if I ask myself what are the options with them other than not going ahead with the peace process they have already decided. So I think they have no option also. So they have to go to the peace process, and since, as I always say, Afghan peace process or a situation in Afghanistan is very complex situation. It's not a very easy to resolve. So Biden administration will have a lot of problems. Yes, of course, Biden administration is different from Trump in a way that Biden knows this region very well. He knows Pakistan very well. He was very instrumental in getting this Kerry Lugar bill aid to Pakistan. His vice president also knows this region very well. So they will have advantage. But coming down to reviewing the situation in Afghanistan is, I think, very difficult, and I don't think so they have many options also to look to when thinking of Afghanistan one. Secondly, if you look situation in Afghanistan now, as the National Security Advisor of Afghanistan says, he is rearresting some of the disgruntled of Taliban,
yes,
who have joined hands with the militants. So and likewise in last episode with you, I said that there is a lot of difference between thinking of approach of those who are actually carrying out talks with the Americans or other stakeholders, and those who are working on ground. There is a difference of opinion between the commanders in the field and people who are negotiating peace. They have a different approach to peace in Afghanistan. So situation is very complex. But I think Biden administration, I think till May this year, they are not likely to change guards in Afghanistan. It is expected that they will keep Khalilzad there because he is chief negotiator, and I think they won't change their commander in the battlefield. They will continue to stick with him, and because he knows he is pushing the peace process. But if you expect anything very drastic from Taliban, or you expect anything drastic happening in Afghanistan, I think it is not going to happen, and things will continue the way they are going. And
so this peace process is going to slow down, or linger on, or perhaps
yes,
there could be delays.
I think till May, Biden administration will observe also. This review doesn't mean that they are going to change everything. I think review also means that they would see as if what options they have with regards to, Biden has been a strong proponent of keeping very limited force in Afghanistan. They are for withdrawal from, but at the same time they want some capacity, some military capacity inside Afghanistan to probably deal with the kind of presence they want to keep in Afghanistan, or to.
Now the question is, will that be acceptable to the Taliban?
Yeah, but
and the time framework is again going to be very, very important.
Yes, it is because the first, as you said, they have May this year a deadline. They have to leave Afghanistan. Yeah. So it's very difficult as to whether Biden will be able to get what they want, or they can do that kind of withdrawal from Afghanistan, or Taliban will agree to what they think. Situation is very complex.
All right, let me go to Parvez Jamil Mir Saab. Now, Mir Saab, another important aspect is, so far the negotiations were pretty smooth. There were issues regarding the women's rights and the minority rights, and then again the Taliban who were released, they eventually ended up, Mir Saab, joining the the other splinter groups of the Taliban, and a lot of fighting was taking place. Now, the primary area of concern was, number one, to bring down the violence, or go for a ceasefire option, which wasn't acceptable with Taliban. They could hit when and where they wanted, and this is what they have done. So they were talking from a position of strength. Do you believe now that position of strength is going to get eroded at some stage because there is a new administration? PJ Mirza.
Well, first of all, let's get one thing clear. When the United States speaks about human rights, well, it should open its eyes and look towards Kashmir. It should look up inside what's happening in the United States, one. Two, when we speak about Pakistan and Afghanistan, the previous governments have always played Pakistan for their own ends and not for Pakistan's interests. This war, which we have come out of, well, that wasn't our war, but we had to make it our war for our own self-defense. I do remember Sir David Richards, who was the commander of the NATO forces. There was a meeting in London with General Musharraf, and General Musharraf asked me to put a question. And I said, General, are you interested in withdrawing from Afghanistan? Well, he said, personally, I'm not. I'm at odd ends with the hierarchy, because I know if we withdraw, they'll reinforce, regroup, and come back because they're a warring faction. And we've suffered during the times of the Raj. So he says, we know the mentality too well. But now the British, the NATO forces, and of course, the commander-in-chief, the United States of America, they're not on one page. And this is a basic problem which emanates and which engulfs us and Afghanistan. America has to play a stabilizing role with us. As what the foreign minister has just recently issued a statement, look, they've got to come on table on equal terms. They cannot be dictating us as and when. If we don't come up to it, as in 2018, they stopped security assistance. Before that, you know what happened. So now what we need to do is, this is a new government. And this prime minister, for the first time in history, I think he's taking them on head on. And that is a key factor in re-establishing and re-normalizing the relations between Pakistan and the United States. The United States has always used us as somebody, who plays a game in their power structures. Well, that time is no more. There's China now emerged, there's Russia emerging, and of course, the Eastern Bloc is now even seriously thinking of getting rid of the dollar and using their own currency. Now, these are major factors which the US has to really take into consideration. Trump was always playing in the last 4 years or so as an isolationist. He totally isolated himself. It was America first and nothing else. And this is where Biden comes in, and he tries to regularize and normalize relations not with Pakistan, with the entire world. So I think Biden has a lot to catch up on. And of course, at the same time, what we need to see is that the stabilizing factor of the Afghan issue between Pakistan and America, that trust deficit has to be removed, because we don't have any trust between, in fact, the three of us. And I do remember, Faisal, in the Senate, I put a question to Lugar, beg your pardon, John Kerry. I said, is there a trust deficit between the three? And Karzai immediately jumped in and he said, yes, that is a very good question. Yes, we have a trust deficit. So that thing is embedded in the minds of Pakistanis, Americans, and of the Afghans. Now, here we've got to come up on some table, like, expanding the Doha summit, expanding the Doha spirit. And as long as we continue on those lines, yes, there is a glimmer of hope. And as far as leaving the forces, they will leave the forces. There is no way that they'll, sort of evacuate, because they have to watch their own interests. They feel that somebody's behind them. Now, who? All right. Only they know. But
all right, Mirza, I'll get back to you on that also, because it seems to be a complex issue at one end, and at the same time, it seems that it can be resolved. I mean, there has to be will, there has to be proper determination, and all the stakeholders should feel satisfied that whatever the outcome is going to be, they'll get their own share. Now, moving on to Ambassador Khattak Saab, I really want you to comment on certain very important areas. For example, the day Donald Trump took charge, I remember so many people resigned. So many people were not able to work with him. Look at the number of Secretary of States who resigned and they were changed, or the Secretary of Defense, and even National Security Advisor. I can't even remember who was the last one. It was John Bolton and so on. But Mark Esper and then Mike Pompeo. How different do you think the American strategy would be? Because when it comes to Donald Trump, whatever he was fed, he was taking decisions, and few decisions on his own. Now, a very seasoned politician with a very seasoned, I would say, vice president who knows the area very well, Kamala Harris, and along with the new team of General Austin Lloyd, you talk about Jake Sullivan, or for that matter, Mr. Blinken. Do you think they would be able to, come out with some sort of an out-of-box solution, or maybe perhaps could bring down the level of violence, or sort of, make sure that there has to be some sort of an understanding between all the parties, especially the Taliban and the current government? Because the NSA of Afghanistan says that we have picked up almost 600 people who were released earlier. And if you remember, this was the actual issue, was the actual bone of contention between the government and the Taliban negotiators. Your take, sir.
Well, personally, I think you see that Afghanistan will remain central to Pakistan-US relations because this is of strategic importance to both the countries, for the Americans also and for Pakistanis also. Minus this issue, think of it. What is so common between the US and Pakistan in terms of trade, or in terms of attitudes, or in terms of other issues like Middle East, like relations with China, or or improvement of relations with Russia. So Afghanistan remains central. And in Afghanistan, I don't think you see that the peace is going to come that easily and that early. Look, in those people who know Afghanistan know that Afghanistan is a fragmented country, a fragmented society. You don't have just Taliban and government, you have got these warlords also, you have got ethnic contradictions also, and you have the contradictions between the expatriate Afghans, who come, you see, and serve for a while and then go back, you see. There are hundreds and thousands of Afghans who are dual citizens also, and they're, frankly speaking, that in most cases, they think, you see, that it's safer to, you see, have a home outside Afghanistan than inside Afghanistan. So, no comment on their patriotism or anything, you see, but it's a human thing, So, all these factors, and then you have, you see, Iran, which will not be very comfortable with very stable Afghanistan, and India, which would like instability in Afghanistan because that instability would spill over into Pakistan, and so, these are factors, you see, and the Arab factor also, the Arab-Iranian, problems, So Doha talks was a very sort of ambitious initiative, and it worked only to the extent that it made it possible for the Taliban to come to the, dialogue table, and also, you see, for the Afghan government to recognize indirectly Taliban as a party, to the issue, to the dispute. And it helped in legitimizing Taliban as a party in Afghanistan. So, but what happens next, or what happens after that, has yet to be seen. And when it comes to Biden administration, personally, I think, you see, that Biden is a mild man, and he has been senator, you see, for decades, and there's nothing, you see, to write home about it, in the sense that there's nothing outstanding about him. And his vice president, she's not like Dick Cheney, let's be very frank about it. You see that Dick Cheney, who used to contribute so much to the foreign and security policy, and together with Rumsfeld or something. So, this Kamala, Harrison cannot be Dick Cheney or something of a sort, you see. So it's going to be some kind of a collegiate, decisions in which the Secretary of State will matter, Secretary of Defense will matter, Pentagon will matter, and, unlike, the previous era where Trump, used to make the final decision and abrupt decision, sometimes wrong, sometimes right, but decision with impact, with effect. So Biden is not likely to be that effective, when it comes to, politics. Or maybe that is better for the U.S., that he is less hyper, more sober, etc., etc. But the challenges that he faces are also too many. Today, it is just United States of America. It's no longer United States of America. And, 200 years of its history has shown that it hasn't been able to overcome the ethnic racial issue. And, in fact, the attack on the parliament put a huge question mark against democracies also.
Khattak Saab, I'll get back to that, but let me put another question here to the gentleman in our studio. Dr. Saab, couple of points. Now, when we hear the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, Shah Mohammad Qureshi Saab, he says that we want that the Biden administration should not reverse their decision regarding Afghanistan, and they should preserve whatever has been done in 2020 in February and about a year ago, and that is the best way forward, the Doha Accord and all. At the same time, the American administration really believed that Zalmay Khalilzad should be the chief negotiator because look at his homework, look at the kind of time he spent there and the engagement he had with the rest of the stakeholders. Our Chief of Army Staff says that peace in Afghanistan means peace in Pakistan. The point is that if peace is there in Afghanistan, it is not going to suit India in any way. And now let's talk about the hostile actors. Let's talk about the dirty players, because I think the role of the Indians was minimized. Don't you think they would like to get that role back, A? And secondly, when you talk about Joe Biden, sir, and look at his executive orders, whether he talked about the wall or the Paris climate issue, or he talked about so many other decisions regarding COVID and so on and so forth, this particular issue of the foreign policy seemed to be at the back burner.
Right. When our foreign minister says the US administration should not reverse the process, so he is right, because in a sense, in a way that you have not reached here in moments. You have taken a lot of time. You have actually traversed a lot of long journey to come to the point where now you find, though it is still fragmented, as the ambassador has mentioned, situation is volatile, there are still frictions, but you have reached here after a very long time, after a lot of effort has been put in. So reversing the process of peace in Afghanistan means that you are actually multiplying everything with zero, and given that you have no other viable option also at the moment visible to you. With regards to foreign minister's statement, and when we talk of the Khalilzad staying as chief negotiator, I agree. He has done a lot of homework. He has done a lot of effort in bringing this peace process to where it is today. Like I always talk that when there are peacemakers, there are spoilers of peace also. So for sure, Indian peace in Afghanistan is not in India's interest, because peace in Afghanistan means peace on the western border of Pakistan, which is counterproductive to what India actually plans to do and has been working all along post 9/11. So I think the reversing of the situation, reversing of peace process, or reviewing of peace process for the and trying to denting of peace process in Afghanistan would definitely serve India's interest in Afghanistan, which Pakistan definitely wouldn't like to happen. Now, I think there should be a sense prevailing, and I think the American administration too knows that if you reverse the process, it is likely to complex the situation more than what it is now. It's not very easy. As I always say, it's a very complex situation in Afghanistan, and and there's no easy solution to these problems. I strongly believe that given Joe Biden's experience as long experience as a politician in U.S. Parliamentary politics, U.S. politics, he understands this situation in Afghanistan is volatile, and there's no quick fix for this solution. So I think they will definitely review the process, but they are going to stick to what has happened. And of course, as I have said, they would try to do somewhat different to what Trump has been doing.
And what could be that?
Like they would say, they will take the situation, they won't be very aggressive. They would engage with the stakeholders.
They won't be aggressive, but the point is that, again, two important areas. Forget about what the demand of the Americans is, whether they talk about human rights or not, but primarily to reduce the violence, reduction in violence in Afghanistan. And secondly, the most important is that to disengage the Taliban or their groups from the non-state actors, because it seems that Daesh or ISIS or so many other factions, they are gaining strength by each and every passing day. And the point is, again, who is feeding them, who is financing them, who is training them, who is providing them the weapons to fight, and who is trying to, sort of, again, malign Pakistan. So that means that all those factions present inside Afghanistan, they have their own mind. They have their own way of pursuing things, for that matter. Let me take the same point to PJ Mir Sahib. Mir Sahib, now a couple of points. One is about the current understanding. Because if you remember, even in those times when this accord was being signed and reviewed in Doha, the current president, Ghani Saab, was not at all happy with it, and especially regarding the exchange of prisoners. Initially he said, well, we are not exchanging any prisoners. Later on it happened. But that was again the bone of contention, as I earlier mentioned. Now, what particular areas you think could be the triggering factor for either a delayed process or a confused process? Let me put it this way, sir.
Well, first of all, when we speak of the United States, we are the largest exporters in the world for them, and they are the biggest foreign direct investors in Pakistan. One. Now, that is our economic and trade relationship. Afghanistan. Now, in the last visit I had with Prime Minister Gilani, their only bone of contention was that they should be given more concessions. But then Pakistan had reservations that, we need to be checking your, goods, whatever they're going in, because there could be arms and munitions. Now, as long as we, I think, give this concession proviso with the right scrutiny, I think the Afghans will be very happy with it, because this is their land route coming all the way from Karachi onto Peshawar. We need to be easing off their transportation, because their goods get perished and they get totally volatile, as far as business is concerned. So we need to give them that access. We've got to start rebuilding our relations with Afghanistan. Then they have this issue of, fencing. Well, we can't go back on that, because that is one of the reasons that we have had this, cross-border terrorism gone to a minimum. And that is, of course, under the National Action Plan. Now, these are some of the factors which we need to be engaging ourselves in. And on top of that, when we always start a dialogue about Afghanistan, Iran, or anywhere else, well, India pops in. Why does India pop in? Because India has got a very strong PR system in the United States, in Washington in particular. We don't have any strong lobbyists. We need to get strong lobbyists. We need to get, centers out there who can actually, get Pakistan's case across. We don't have that. Whatever we do, Faisal, we do it on our national television, we do it in Pakistan, but our viewpoint doesn't get across. If it did get across, then there would be some sort of a, and there would be some sort of a, reaction. I mean, here in Europe, a little bird gets missing, a young child gets missing, and the entire media takes it over. Yet, helpless people die on a daily basis in Kashmir, and the world doesn't blink an eye, and not even the Ummah, which we call the Ummah. So we need to re-strategize ourselves. We need to revisit our foreign policy, and our basic foreign policy is the same at what Mr. Jinnah gave us: peace, tranquility, love and consideration in the region. Now, that can only come as long as we, I think, have a very strong lobbying internationally.
All right. Now, Ambassador Saab, couple of more points. I mean, unfortunately, post 2001, we had to be a part of this huge campaign against the Afghan government, and we were the non-NATO allies. And, you know, there was a new government in Pakistan. And interestingly, the Americans, they really pushed us hard also. Things we shouldn't have done, we had to do. Negotiations we could have taken, you know, I mean, or the kind of, I would say, the when you talk about the negotiations and you talk about the balance, I think it went totally in the Americans' favor, not in ours as well, because they expected us to, in fact, you know, renegotiate a certain level, which we didn't. But anyway, to cut the long story short, now that was the time that after that, Pakistan was always looked upon from the Afghan prism. We were always told to do more. We were always told to go after the Haqqani network, and whatever we did was never appreciated. We were always pushed, and eventually that strategic relationship or the partnership got converted into this so-called transactional, in which Joe Biden doesn't believe, because he's openly admitted that what kind of a relationship is this. And it got deteriorated. It got eroded slowly but surely. And eventually this is what has happened. Then came the 45th president, Mr. Donald Trump. And look at this first tweet on New Year's. That really, you know, wasn't something good to read, what the American president was thinking about Pakistan. Now, sir, you believe that this is the time, 2021 onwards, this decade is the decade of change in the region. This decade is the decade of peace in the region. This decade is the decade of growth in the region, sir. Do you see this, or maybe it is just my own fancy dream, maybe?
Well, you know, saying this, that Pakistan has to revisit its foreign policy vis-a-vis America or the region, etc. Frankly speaking, you know that when it comes to foreign policy or foreign affairs, it is not just one party's effort, but also the response of the others, which matter. Now, peace, tranquility, and you know, prosperity, all fine. You see, but we are not living on clouds. You see, we have to come down and look at the realities on the ground. You know, that what's happening in Russia or the former Soviet Union, Eurasia, what is happening between China and India, what is happening, you see, in the Middle East, in the Gulf states, and what is happening in Afghanistan, which is of key importance and key issue to us. You know, my own view on all these issues is that deal with realities, even if these are very harsh. Instead of going after, you see, you're chasing ideals which you may like, which are very desirable, but you may not be able to achieve, you know. Now, a classic case is relations between Iran and Pakistan. Pakistan has always tried to have good relations with Iran. But since the fall of Shah, you see, the relations are not the same. And now it appears that even during the period of the Shah, the relations between Pakistan and Iran were underpinned by CENTO. And once the CENTO was no more there, you see, the relations quality suffered, you know, in terms of military cooperation.
But Khattak Sahab, that is the part of history, sir. I mean, we can talk about the 1947 partition and, you know, things which we did wrong, we couldn't, you know. Now talk about 2021, this post-Trump era, sir. Let's talk about the new developments. Let's talk about the new competitions. There was a time when the Russians were the rivals of the Americans, and we used to hear about the Cold War. Now it's the Chinese. It's a different ballgame altogether now, sir.
Yes. So, you know, frankly speaking, you know, Cold War never ended. You know, when it had ended, and I was posted in Kazakhstan, and I asked a Russian diplomat about the end of the Cold War. He said that Cold War was not about containment of communism. Cold War was about containment of Russia or cutting it to size. You know, it's a, when in containment of Russia, Cold War succeeded. But in cutting it to size, you see, it is facing problems. So, you know, Cold War never ended. In fact, people who think that Cold War ended is, is a bit of a, you see, the optimism, over-optimism. You know, it is a continuation, you know. After the Second World War, it is a continuation, you know. Continuation of, you see, conflicts from European theater. You see, the conflicts were shifted to other theaters, proxy wars instead of direct wars, you know, but wars nevertheless. So, you know, it is these realities that we have to factor in our, you know, formulation of foreign policy. You know, no matter what we wish, you see, how you are going to do about, you see, Iranian Arabs problems. Is there much that Pakistan can do about it? I'm sorry, no. You know, this issue has been there for almost 1,000 years. How Pakistan can go about it? Now, you know, what I'm trying to say is that everyone knows that in Pakistan, the center of gravity is the armed forces of Pakistan. And if Pakistan militarily remains strong, there is a chance of stability in the country as well, inside the country as well. And, you know, for Pakistan, you see, to acquire its due clout, where it can count far more than it is counting now, Pakistan has to develop its internal stability. Pakistan has to reorganize itself inside Pakistan. You know, you cannot, you know, be sort of like a beggar and at the same time a chooser and all that, you know. No, nothing of the sort. So, internally and economically and socially, if we develop, we will have far more clout than we have now, you know. Now, instead of this, you know, if we are thinking of having one ally and then another ally, of course, there is a reconfiguration of forces. The reconfiguration is that earlier it was Soviet Union and China which fell out with each other, and Americans co-opted the Chinese, you know, Nixon's to China and tilted the balance against Soviet Union. Now it is the other way around. It is China and the Soviet Union which are kind of, you know, getting closer towards each other.
All right, Ambassador, thank you so much for your comments. Now, sir, another important area, and that is about, obviously, when we talk about the New World Order and so on and so forth, and especially post-COVID situation, it has really, you know, I would say it has actually, it was more or less like an earthquake, I would say. So many people died all over the globe, so many, and the fear factor was so strong and so genuine also. Look at the number of deaths in America. Look at the number of deaths across Europe, for that matter, over here. I mean, I think Asia was comparatively much safer, maybe because of the constraint or whatever. Now, these were the mega challenges of the last year. We haven't heard much about new wars because Donald Trump did not, you know, approved for any other new war, except for a few attacks, maybe, perhaps the mother of all bombs in Afghanistan or some 100 missiles in Syria, for that matter. But the basic idea was to withdraw and look inwards rather than looking outwards. Over here, sir, when you look at the Democrats, their approach has always been inwards as well as outwards. I mean, look at the number of people, I mean, in the recent past who were so committed and knew the area so well, especially this area or China for that matter, or other issues. Now, so when you talk about people like Hillary Clinton for that matter, she knows this area so well, or for that matter, Mr. Barack Obama. And then even if you go into the past, you'll get to know that these people really mastered about the history and the dynamics of Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran. Now, so looking at the current situation in Iran, P5+1 and its future, looking at the overall philosophy of Pakistan, and historically the Democrats have always had a tilt towards the Indians, and especially a lot of Indians are very happy that Kamala Harris is there. Maybe they're wrong, because she seems to be a pretty neutral woman, especially when it comes to human rights. She's very aggressive on that front. What sort of a change, immediate change do you see? Because now he's just handling the very basics. I mean, COVID issue, monetary issues, for example, unemployment and so on and so forth. But slowly and surely he's going to depute his people and see what's going all over the world.
Right. When we say the change with Biden's administration, so this is my assessment that normally in America, we many things American policies are structural. Now the change of president definitely means that a person is coming and there's a personalized tinge to what will happen, a particular presidency's time. But generally the policies are somewhat same. And the policies are there are a number of stakeholders in formulating the policies, like Pentagon and other political parties, Congress, and there's so many factors that formulate policies in America. Definitely like when we say Democrats have come, so they have a viewpoint about certain issues. Now Indians are very happy that Kamala Harris has an Indian origin, and they're also happy because many of the team members of Biden's also come from Indian origins, so they're but I think we expect some voice in White House or in Vice President Kamala Harris about human rights violation in Kashmir, because the other issue that Americans, as a public opinion in America, is also very critical of what is happening in Kashmir. So the leaders in America, they are driven by the public opinion that they have.
People have been silenced most of the times. I mean, during the Trump era, most likely a few newspapers, primarily went against him, in order to give their own point of view, but never, in fact, supported Trump on that.
No, I say they will heed to some extent to what public opinion about human rights is, but policies are going to be the same. Like they will have a tilt towards India, they will have a friction with China, and particularly when post-COVID, during the COVID and post-COVID scenario, you see China seems to be winning this COVID battle, and America seems to be losing the battle. So this friction on an international level will continue to be going on, and Pakistan will also, we will not see much difference from what Trump administration used to look at Pakistan's situation. I think it will more or less the continuation of the same.
Continuation of the same. As you earlier mentioned that the current government doesn't have much to maneuver. Now a couple of points are here. Peter Mirza, because it is also very important by looking into what is happening inside USA. After this particular election, I've spoken to so many of my friends who are not Pakistanis but Americans living there, but they were born there, and they feel very insecure. They feel that there is an absolute division and polarization in the US society, and people are generally scared not only in terms of being scared from the blacks or the Mexicans or others, but economic scare is there. You talk about health, and now he is also reversing and working on the Obamacare. Let's see where it leads. People are concerned about that. People are really afraid of COVID. People are, very uncertain kind of a behavior, because uncertainty unfortunately prevails out there at the maximum after this particular election. Now what I'm saying is that once you have this kind of a division within the American society, and for example Afghanistan needs a certain amount of money from the US taxpayers, do you think that is going to be a doable proposition for them, sir? Or if not, that can also put a lot of pressure on the current administration to withdraw on ASAP basis?
Well, Faisal, first of all, not a lot of people know, but the Congress has put a lot of limitations on CIA funding and funding to countries like Pakistan and, of course, to Afghanistan, and probably other countries as well. Why? Because obviously the funding which has been given to the countries, they haven't been utilized properly. And that is one of the reasons the senators, they cry out, as you would have seen them, them in the Congress and Senate ranting away. Now, this is the reason what we need to be doing when we speak about our own situation. If you remember, before our Prime Minister went to the United States, what kind of an attitude and the connotations which were coming out via President Trump? We were deceitful, we were cheats, we were dishonest. And the moment our Prime Minister goes and explains, including the Islamophobia factor, all of a sudden the situation changes. Now, this is Pakistan's biggest problem. I do remember when the nuclear blast took over and Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif went into London, his people couldn't even converse with the counterparts. Now, when you don't have qualified people who cannot speak the language, who cannot speak one-to-one, eye-to-eye, well, that's where you lose your immediate case. Now, this is the kind of a thing which we need to be, again, addressing. Let's say, our communication gap is horrible. It's horrible. I've seen only one Prime Minister, apart from, of course, I didn't go on this one. Mr. Shaukat Aziz went there. He was speaking eye to eye with the top of the top blue chip company, owners. Now that created an impact. Hey, there is Pakistan. Now these are the facts which we really need to be addressing into. Our lobbying, as I said earlier, Faisal, it is very poor. India is far superior to us in this, and we need to be countering it. What we have done is gone on the defensive and penny-wise and pound-foolish, whereas they have gone on and their people have gone on into the Congress, into the Senate, and being part of it. Our diaspora only remains sort of embedded in the British Parliament. We need to be encouraging people to get into international politics rather than speaking again back to Pakistan, back to the States, and so on forth. We can't. I mean, Kamala Harris is a prime example. India, Guyana, and of course there now she's the vice president. And what a change in the American politics. The first ever woman to come, to that pivoted slot. So what we have to do here today, look, Pakistan is going to stay, period. But you, me, ambassadors and others will come and go. We need to be talking long term. We don't have a long-term plan. We've got to be working on long-term, and long-term plan means creating a dialogue, not a monologue. So I think that these are the areas which need to be addressed. And as far as this Kashmir issue is concerned, believe me, I say through your program, we've had the 3 best centers in Brussels, in London, and of course in Washington. Washington, there was a faux pas, but we were pleading our case and we were there. We were literally there. We were getting 42 to 48 members of the European Parliament listening to us. Here, who's listening to us? Apart from India monitoring, no one is listening to us. And there, they go out and counter us on the international podium. In Geneva, we go and present a case, India is standing right up there. So these are the factors which we need to be addressing. And we cannot be India-centric. If India is friendly with UAE, Saudi Arabia, or any other country, well, let it be. That is their friendship. We need to be establishing our own friendships with different countries rather than being just focused, on India-centric sort of policies. We've got to get out of this myopic.
Very well said, Mir Sahib. I think it is high time to look inward and, sort out our own policies first, sort our own house in order, and then, then we can always talk about it. But Mir Sahib, was a pleasure having you, sir. Thank you so much for your time. And Dr. Sahib, always great to have you, sir. Thank you so much for your time as well. And that's all we have for this hour. Inshallah, I'll see you again. Till then, you take good care of yourself. Khuda Hafiz.